shit show stays on because of you.
You know, they say if you can't say anything nice, don't say anything at all. I'm sorry. Okay, keep going. I don't know where that came from. Go ahead.
What do we have here?
Welcome to the motherfucking carnival.
It's about Fred and your trip to the cave, Brian.
You really want to hear about all that?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, man. Well, I mean, it started with that jailhouse call, which sounded fascinating, but I didn't really want to go with just that, so I tried to reach out to Fred. I tried to talk to Fred, and of course, at that point, you couldn't get to Fred without talking to Ziggy. And
Right.
Started talking to her. Then she's like, well, yeah, you can just do a jail call with him. So I figured I'd go to the jail, which apparently is a video call anyway. And they wouldn't, I don't know, that was a whole fiasco. They approved my visit, and then I stood there for a while in front of the camera in the room, and then they just said he was busy for some stupid reason. So I don't know. So I left, and then eventually got a phone call with him, and he gave me, in the video call with the jail call, his description was so vague. It was like Laurel Run under a cave, and he didn't really give any details. So finally, we got on the call with him. I asked him, could you describe exactly where this thing is? Because I'll go out there, I'll walk in any part of Laurel Run if you just tell me exactly where to go. And he said, if you go down Logger Creek, I think it's called.
Lager Falls.
Logger Falls, thank you. It's been so long, I'm sorry. Like it's 2 years ago, a year ago. It was, Logger. He goes, you go to Logger Falls, go all the way to the trash pile, and once you find the trash pile, he said it's about 500 feet from the trash pile, downstream or upstream, whichever is away from the road. And so finally, I went with a buddy of mine. We finally found, I got to tell you guys, the whole area is like a trash pile. Like once you start getting within a mile of the road, it's junk. There's like tanks in the stream. There's just trash everywhere, but it's not I wouldn't call it a pile. I just call it random scattered remains of junk throughout the trail. But then you do get to this cliff at the waterfall, right at Logger Falls, I'm not sure if that's Logger Falls, but there's a waterfall only a few hundred feet from the road. And right there is a overturned, like someone had driven a car or pushed a car right off a cliff, and it just fell on the ground. So I'm like, maybe that's what he means by the trash pile.
Now, was he directing you to where Cotton supposedly fell, or where Cotton had told him Summer's body was? What were you looking for?
So that's a good question. That's a really good question. Specifically, I said, because his story was the Cotton had hidden Summer in a cave.
Right.
Right. And so I'm like,
underwater fall.
Yeah, I'm like, I don't need to know where Cotton passed. I just need to know, where's that cave? Where's this alleged cave? And so it's the cave I was asking for, and that's what he was describing. It was about 500 feet or so from the trash pile. And then, so what I did was we started at the waterfall. I even went underwater with the camera and looked for a cave under the water. Then I'm like, all right, if he means 500 feet, the only side there can be a cave on is the cliff side, because the other side is just a hill. There's like dirt, a dirt hill. So we actually walked the cliff side, myself and my buddy. Can't remember his name now either. I'm so tired. I'm sorry. We hiked the cliffs. There's no cave. There's no cave, you guys. Like there's crevices. We looked in the crevices. We used poles with lights. There's no cave there. But after that hike, I was so frustrated and so angry. I'm like, I'm not dealing with Fred anymore. I'm talking to the Simpson family, because they would know. They would know about the cave. They would know where he fell. So I just reached out to them, and I just started talking to them. And once I started talking to them, the truth just, I got to tell you, that's when I'm like, I'm done with Fred, because they told me, yes, Roy fell in that area. There's no cave where he fell. It was a cliff. It was on Simpson property, and the family was like, we're not going to tell anyone where it is because it's on private property. We don't want damn YouTubers out there videoing the place where he died. And I completely understood. But what it told me is, number one, the whole cave thing is BS, complete BS. He kind of took what he does, and what I learned from that whole experience is he takes the true story. He probably knew, because he does talk to people and he knows people in the area, and he hears the stories, and he heard that Roy Simpson fell off a cliff in Laurel Run. So he took that little gem of truth and he just twisted it into the Summerwells case by making it, oh, when that guy fell off a cliff, it was actually hiding something in a cave, and he made it related to the Summerwells case. That's what I believe happened.
I do too, because he was looking at some major time in prison at that point. And I think he was shooting for a deal, possibly.
Oh, and I don't know what's out there about his connection with Simpson. I don't know if the whole drug thing, is that even out there? Should we talk about that?
Cotton or Marvin?
Roy and Fred.
With Cotton, with his
come
meth
out a
in the
little
system?
bit, yeah.
Like,
Well, Fred was with Cotton.
Only a few hours before he died, yes.
Right.
Yeah.
And Cotton had all that pocket full of money.
He had a bunch of money, and I believe he bought some drugs. I don't know if it was meth specifically, but he bought some drugs. I'm not going to say who. Well, screw it. The family believes the drugs were potentially laced, or I don't know, something wrong with the drugs, because they believe he was out of his mind. There's no reason he would have gone to that cliff, gone out there hiking. He was frail. This guy was frail. He could barely walk.
Yeah, well, that makes sense, because it says on the poly that he had the meth in his system.
Yep.
So,
yes.
Yeah.
Did he have the money on him when they found him, Ryan?
That's a very good question.
I don't think so, because that's why people are saying that he got robbed.
Yeah, he did not have all that money with him.
Yeah, Fred's sister. See, I'm not quoting anybody, but it's been said that Fred said, I figured he'd get robbed with all that money on him.
Yep.
And it's
he actually said that.
Yeah, and then Ziggy told the story that him and Marvin followed him after he was supposedly buying a boat, or talking about buying a boat, that they followed him out of the holler to the cemetery. He's told it.
He said that they followed
Yes,
them.
I've clipped it. Yes.
Oh my gosh, that's insane.
Yeah. Well, Laura said that when she told Fred that Cotton had been found, that he bolted out of there, turned white, and ran out the door.
Oh, Ellie, I'm sorry, I missed the comment. So when he said, that's a good question too. So he sent me to Marvin Simpson. He was in prison, jail, so he couldn't show me where the cave was. So he said, go talk to Marvin Simpson. He gave me his address. And in his text, he did make that comment, like, please clear our names. And at the time, I didn't know the story about Simpson. I didn't know about the drugs. I didn't know about him being suspected, him buying drugs from Fred and then immediately dying just a few hours later. I didn't know that. So at the time, I'm like, clear out your names. I have no idea. Now, in hindsight, now I understand.
Yeah.
He's under suspicion, obviously.
Yeah.
I wonder what he knew about the death scene that wasn't publicly released, and how did he know that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think
How would he know
claims
that?
he's talked to his sister, I believe is what he has said, but he also points fingers at the sister as well for being the one responsible for his death.
He's pointing a lot of fingers at people. How many fingers does he have?
Quite a few.
And I will say one last thing about the family. I gotta say is, I can't tell you guys, like, we've talked to missing people who deal with scam artists, and it hurts them. And I feel this. I sense the same hurt from the Simpson family, who have had their father, their their spouse put under suspicion of doing something to a little girl by this guy, Fred.
Yeah.
Can you imagine how that feels for that family? Like, they are furious, but they also know that Fred had a little ring of, criminal, whatever they are, the whole drug scene, and they're terrified. Like, they don't want to talk to people. They don't want to have anything to do with this, but then it keeps coming up on YouTube. Roy's name keeps coming up, and every time it comes up, it hurts the family so bad. And that's what pisses me off more than anything.
Yeah.
But
You
here's
know-
what this is what Laura said about what Fred knew. She said, Ziggy then talked about Fred having to take the lie detector about Cotton, and she's asking what it is that Fred had info on that had not been released publicly. And Laura said she said, "Remember, I told you earlier that someone told Fred that Cotton was hit in the back of the head, and that's what gave them grounds to do the lie detector test." She said one of Cotton's family members had told a friend, and that friend told Fred. That friend told Fred. And that Ziggy had talked to a close family member of Cotton's, and they were under the assumption that it was an accident. But none of that was released publicly, so.